Battle of the Washita, General Custer to General Sheridan. New York Times, 30th of November, 1868. Headquarters, 7th U.S. Cavalry. In the field of the Washita River, 28 November, 1868. On the morning of the 26th, this command, comprising 11 troops of the 7th Cavalry, struck the trail of an Indian war party numbering about 100 warriors. The trail was not quite 24 hours old and was first discovered near the point where the Texas boundary line crosses the Canadian River. The direction was towards the southeast. The ground being covered by over 12 inches of snow, no difficulty was experienced in following the trail. A vigorous pursuit was at once instituted. Wagons, tents, and all other impediments to a rapid march were abandoned. From daylight until 9 o'clock at night, the pursuit was unchecked. The column was countermarched and withdrew to a retired point to prevent discovery. After reconnoitering with all the officers of the command the location of the village, which was situated in a strip of heavy timber, I divided the command into 4 columns of nearly equal strength. The first, consisting of 3 companies, under Major Elliott, was to attack in the timber from below the village. At the hour at which the 4 columns were to charge simultaneously was the first dawn of day, and notwithstanding the fact that 2 of the columns were compelled to march several miles to reach their positions, the attack of 3 of them made the attack so near together as to make it appear like one charge. The other column was only a few minutes late. There never was a more complete surprise. My men charged the village and reached the lodge before the Indians were aware of our presence. The moment the charge was ordered, the band struck up Gary Owen, and with cheers that strongly reminded me of scenes during the war, every trooper, led by his officers, rushed towards the village. The Indians were caught napping for once, and the warriors rushed from their lodges and posited themselves behind trees and in the deep ravines, from which they began a most determined defense. The lodges and all their contents were in our possession within a few minutes after the charge was ordered, but the real fighting, such as rarely, if ever, been equaled in Indian warfare, began when attempting to clear out and kill the warriors posited in the ravines or underbrush. Charge after charge was made, and most gallantly too, but the Indians had resolved to sell their lives as dearly as possible. After a desperate conflict of several hours, our efforts were crowned with the most complete and gratifying success. The entire village, numbering 47 lodges of Black Kettle's band of Cheyennes, 2 lodges of Arapahoes, and 2 lodges of Sioux, 51 lodges in all, under command of their principal chief Black Kettle, fell into our hands. By a strict and careful examination after the battle, the following figures give some of the fruits of our victory. The Indians left on the ground and in our possession the bodies of 108 of their warriors, including Black Kettle himself, whose scalp is now in the possession of one of our Osage guides. We captured in good condition 875 horses, ponies, and mules, 241 saddles, some of very fine and costly workmanship, 523 buffalo robes, 210 axes, 140 hatchets, 35 revolvers, 47 rifles, 535 pounds of powder, 1,050 pounds of lead, 4,000 arrows, 90 bullet molds, 35 bows and quivers, 12 shields, 300 pounds of bullets, 775 lariats, 940 buckskin saddlebags, 470 blankets, 93 coats, 700 pounds of tobacco. In addition, we captured all of their winter supply of dried buffalo meat, all their meal, flour, and other provisions, and in fact everything they possessed, even driving the warriors from the village with little or no clothing. We destroyed everything of value to the Indians, and have now in our possession, as prisoners of war, 53 squaws and their children. Among the prisoners are the survivors of Black Kettles and the family of Little Rock. We also secured 2 white children held captive by the Indians. One white woman who was in their possession was murdered by her captors the moment we attacked. A white boy held captive, about 10 years old, when about to be secured, was brutally murdered by a squaw who ripped out his entrails with a knife. The Kiowas under Satanta and Arapahoes under Little Raven were encamped 6 miles below Black Kettle's village, and the warriors from these 2 villages came to attempt the rescue of the Cheyennes. They attacked my command from all sides about noon, hoping to recover the squaws and herds of the Cheyenne. But in their attack they displayed great boldness and compelled me to use all my force to repel them. But the countercharge of cavalry was more than they could stand. By 3 o'clock we drove them in all directions, pursuing them several miles. I was then 3 days' march from where I had left my train of supplies, and knew that the wagons would not follow me, as the trail had led me over a section of country so cut up by ravines and other obstructions that the cavalry could with difficulty move over it. The supplies carried from the train on the persons of the men were exhausted. My men, from loss of sleep and hard service, were wearied out. My horses were in the same condition for want of forage. I therefore began my return march about 8 p.m. and found my train of supplies at the point, it having accomplished only 16 miles since I left it. In the excitement of the fight, as well as in self-defense, it so happened that some of the squaws and a few children were killed and wounded. The latter I have brought with me, and they receive all the needful attention the circumstances of the case permit. Many of the squaws were taken with arms in their hands, and several of my command are known to have been wounded by them. I cannot sufficiently commend the admirable conduct of the officers and men. This command has marched constantly 5 days amidst terrible snowstorms and over rough country covered by more than 12 inches of snow. Officers and men have slept in the snow without tents. The night preceding the attack, officers and men stood at their horses' heads for hours, awaiting the moment of attack, and this, too, when the temperature was far below the freezing point. They have endured every privation and fought with unsurpassed gallantry against a powerful and well-armed foe. I only regret the loss of the gallant spirits who fell in the Battle of the Washita. Those whose loss we are called upon to deplore were among our bravest and best.